PR firms are innovating ahead of the market. Their entrepreneurial spirit is helping them outpace the market in terms of growth. And so we thought it would be a good idea to close today's Independent PR Firm Forum with a conversation with the founder of an agency that really embodies that independent spirit. Lewis began life more than 2 decades ago as a little technology public relations shop in London. It has since grown to more than $70 million in revenue. It's a global force across several markets. And yet, despite all that growth, it's retained a fierce independent streak and indeed a desire to disrupt the hegemony of the publicly held global PR market. So to talk to us and to close today's Independent PR Firm Forum with a discussion about how independent PR firms can, are, and will disrupt the global PR market, please join me in welcoming to the stage the founder and CEO of Lewis, Mr. Chris Lewis. Welcome.
Thank you.
Are we sitting?
Yeah. Do you want to sit or stand?
Well, last time you stood, but we'll sit
We can
if
sit.
you don't mind.
Do you want us to sit or stand? Or dance?
Sit.
Should we dance?
Sit. There's a screen. We'll sit. I'd rather sit, really.
We'll sit.
So, Chris,
Arun.
let's start by talking about this theme that you have brought up every so often, the oligarchs. We are not referring to Russian businessmen with nefarious political connections. You use the phrase oligarchs in a different context when talking about the public relations industry. Who are they, and why do they matter to you?
Well, it's a good question. Most of you in this room have got more in common with the rest of the professional services industry than anybody that is in this room who's representing a publicly quoted company. So I would ask the question, how many law firms do you know that are publicly quoted? How many management consultancies do you know that are publicly quoted? How many accountancy firms do you know that are publicly quoted? Architecture firms, veterinary practices, just about anybody that's in the professional services arena is owned by partnership structure. And so my contention is that in marketing services, it's actually unusual in the professional services industry for professionals to be owned by publicly quoted companies. And in our sector, there are 4, 5 large ones, and you all know who they are and the brands that they own. Mm-hmm. And they have dominated this industry for the last 20 to 30 years. And largely, it's the same brands owned by the same companies which have dominated your industry. And your industry as independent professionals owes much more in common with the practices of law or architecture or veterinary practices or whatever, because professional services industries and firms are by and large held by the people that work in them. Employee ownership, partner structures, whichever way you care to call it. Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question?
So the oligarchs are the big publicly held firms.
Yes.
And you've often talked about how you want to disrupt them, how you want to take them on. Why is that important to you?
Well, for the reasons that I've stated, which is that if you're interested in professional services and the standards that they have, you have at times of change to think long term and invest long term. And everybody knows that stock markets work on a 90-day horizon, and it's a matter of public record that sometimes these holding companies merge with each other, and they start bringing brands together. It's, again, a matter of record that some of the brands that are held by these companies are being merged themselves in order to get greater profitability. The clients and the staff, they're not the primary consideration of the holding companies.
So is John Doolittle still here?
Yeah, John's here. Yeah, I think we had a chat earlier on. John's great. He's a great representative of Omnicom, and you all know about the machinations of Omnicom with Publicis, as you mentioned it yourself, and you know that they have brands like Fleischmann Hillard and Porter Novelli and Ketchum, all within the same stable, and many of those brands draw water from the same well. And If you're a professional working in those firms, then what interests you is the standard of training, the standard of investment, the standard of probity in the organization, and your future. Because when they make investment decisions, it would be nice if those firms considered your future and your professional standards and what your clients are trying to achieve, rather than the interests of a pension fund in Zurich.
Okay, that's a good tweet.
I'm trying.
We'll come back to the ownership structure in a second. What about the impact on global, on the business, on winning business, on global client assignments? Do you find that winning global business is heavily weighted towards these publicly held firms, and is that an area that you're trying to shake up?
Well, this is a really fascinating subject, because when you look at the total PR spend that there is, 50% of it occurs within the geographic boundaries of America. And probably within the geographic boundaries of America, another 25% is decided for spend around the world. So we can probably say that 75% of the total decision-making provenance is based in America. And it's no accident that the largest holding companies are American. Although WPP is based in London, most of the brands are American brands. And so they're serving a global audience. Those are serving a global customer, the S&P 500. And if you looked in detail at those large firms, one thing that characterizes the top of the industry is that it's largely constrained by conflict. If you look at Edelman, one of the biggest competitors to Edelman is Edelman itself. So it's created a conflict brand in order to handle other brands that cannot be handled within the main brand. And largely speaking, within other holding companies, they too have a contractual relationship with another conflict brand. So if the top of the industry is constrained by conflict, and the bottom of the industry is constrained by the competition of smaller companies competing with each other, where is the change in the industry going to come from?
That's a rhetorical question, I assume.
I thought you might be able to help.
Okay, I'm sure. Why don't you go ahead and answer it for us?
Well, I think it's ultimately comes from for independent companies thinking and planning long term, and recognizing that you can take on the bigger players by doing what any challenger brand has to do. If you've got clients that take on challengers within taking on an incumbency, and the golden rule in marketing terms, if you're challenging incumbency, is you have to do what the opposition is unable or unwilling to do. And that's pretty straightforward. If you say, what is a large organization unwilling or unable to do? And the answer to that is to move quickly, maybe to invest more in training, to invest more in the long term, to think long term, to spread ownership of the equity more widely. Why is it that so many people in this industry don't participate in the value of companies that they do so much to create? Why does that happen? It doesn't happen in the legal profession. It doesn't happen in the accountancy profession. It doesn't happen in management consulting. They participate in the wealth that they're creating. Why not this industry?
And on that point, I mean, I think it was last year when you said to me, at some point somebody has to ask the question, which capital structure is the best for professional service firms? Now, clearly you don't think that's public ownership.
Well, if you look across from other professional services organizations, I mean, that's simply not a matter of fact that it works in other areas. So I don't think I'm alone in recognizing that. But WPP as an organization has acquired 355 organizations since it started. So one very talented man, Martin Sorrell, has actually changed the face of this industry by creating more public ownership. And he's done it in a brilliant way. He's one of the most successful people our industry has ever created. All I'm asking is that maybe, some of us in this room would like to eat a few crumbs when they fall off his table to keep the rest of the independents fed, because competition is good for standards. Globalization is great for organizations that can go out there and serve clients on a global basis. There just aren't enough of us out there to compete with these brands. The age of the brands alone should suggest their dominance. Edelman started in the late 40s, Burson Marsteller in the early 50s, Golan Harris in the early 70s. These are, by their very nature, 20th century brands.
But how do you compete with a big publicly held firm that is, in some cases, 10 times as big as yours, when those spending decisions are being made?
Well, again, thinking about what they're unwilling or unable to do. Take, for instance, training. If you make an argument within a publicly held company for training, they will say, but if you train people, they leave. Now, you will know what it's like if you employ millennials. If they stay with you for 4 years, then that's pretty good. And if they stay with you on average for 4 years, your staff churn is 25% in that layer. 4 years, 25%. 5 years, 20%. Those are the maths. They're immutable. So if you really want to keep those, if you want to see those people as a source of opportunity rather than a problem, why not invest in training them so that when they leave, they actually go to other organizations, perhaps where they're not trained in the same sort of way. After all, training is just word-of-mouth marketing. That's all it is, really. It's not a sunk cost.
Now you have, not you, Lewis has got considerably bigger over the past couple of years, past 3 or 4 years, I think. Yeah.
I think he's saying I look like a man that doesn't need any more cookies.
The cookies are very good here, by the way.
I know,
But
I've
anyway,
been trying to avoid them.
You've bought, what, 5 agencies over the last 4 years? Now, some people would say buying 1 agency is quite hard. You've bought 5. Is that really an advisable way to grow in such a short period?
Well, I think actually there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that actually want to be with other entrepreneurs. They actually don't want us to be run for profit. They want to belong to a wider partnership structure. And so we've bought in either geographic areas like China or in vertical sectors. Our industry is going through a huge change. So, for instance, there are acquisitions to make in the area of cellular technology, cellular marketing, mobile marketing, geofence mobile marketing, even tagging companies going down to the level of search. These are the sort of vertical sectors where we should actually be looking to bring in technical companies as part of our industry and not just other marketing services businesses.
And the cumulative impact of the acquisitions has taken you to 70 million from you were closer to 40, I think?
Yeah, about 45, yeah.
Right, okay, so it's had a big impact on your top line.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't all this growth mean you're just trying to join the oligarchs rather than disrupt them?
Well, one of the issues here is that the size of these organizations. I mean, Edelman is the largest company in our sector with revenues of 800 million, something like that.
More, yeah, more, close to 900 now.
To have just 10% of that would more than double our organization. So the scale of these brands is difficult to challenge anyway. So I'm flattered that you think we're on our way to it. Frankly, I think we're nowhere near. I think we need to double and then we need to double again. And we need to be much bigger in America to be able to do that. But if you want to challenge their dominance, then yes, you've got to be able to have the scale that they've got. Yes, you've got to be able to provide the geographic reach. And you've also got to do something qualitative. You haven't just got to be as big as they are by size. You've got to be doing something better. So if Edelman is ever sold as an organization, there are many in this room that actually will be the largest independents. And when that mantle passes to your shoulder, you better be ready to have an opinion about the industry, because this is your industry. If you care about it, you should care about the capital structures and the short-term thinking and the lack of investment and the lack of ability to change quickly. You should care about those things. You should care about the diversity of it. You should care about the geographic reach. This is a fabulous industry, and it should be creative and it should be invested in. And often we only see that happening really with entrepreneurial firms that are taking these opportunities that exist.
So as you seek to grow, will you acquire more? And if so, where and what?
No, it's the quiet life for me now.
Okay.
I've got my cocoa and my slippers, and we're going to take it easy from now on, Arun. So no more from me. I can see it's late and people want to get on to their early evening drinks. So no more acquisitions, no.
Without disclosing details, what regions would interest you? What kinds of firms would interest you?
Well, we have to get bigger in America. There's no doubt about that. You can't be global unless you're big in America. A lot of the technology firms interest me particularly because if we want to be creative with our stories, there's no point being creative unless people can find the stories that we're writing for clients. So we have to become experts in search. We have to be experts in tagging, particularly digital assets. And we have to be experts in building infrastructure, because unless we build the infrastructure, we can't actually optimize the search. So why are we not involved in building infrastructure? Because any webmaster will tell you if you build the website and search is built into it, then your campaign is twice as effective. So we need to own those areas as well. So certainly more by technology, certainly more by geography, because and in our sector, why should you be constrained to consumer PR or technical PR? You know, why not be a bit more ambitious and aim for the boards of Fortune 500 companies and go into the area of geopolitics? because one of the things that's confusing a lot of boardrooms is that they're so overloaded with information about the way the world is, they don't have anybody to actually even chart a way forward. So economically, we have to ask a question in an age where we've got record low oil prices, with record low interest rates, with a record level of quantitative easing, so much so that there is so much cash washing around this planet. Why is everybody so nervous about the future? Can you explain that? These are economic conditions which are unprecedented. So could it be that they're confused and overloaded with the amount of data and information that's going on? I think there could be. That's why the book, Too Fast to Think, I wanted this audience to read it to see what they think about it. Many of you are suffering from jet lag, so it's the perfect opportunity to get to sleep when you read it. So tell me your opinions of it. Tell me what you think.
Pretty sure if you are suffering from jet lag after Chris's session today, you'll be revived. So we know that you will spend more on acquisition.
It's possible.
What about internal investment? You've been quite vocal about training, for example.
Well, I'm pleased that we spend £1 million on training. So over $70 million, whatever the sterling rate is to the dollar, it's worth about almost $3. I think now sterling's collapsed. But we spent spent £1 million creating a training academy and flying people around the world for a couple of weeks of training. And yeah, that's not going to appear in the profits. In fact, it's going to damage our profits in the next 90 days, and probably for this year. And some of the people that go on those courses will leave. But actually, if you believe in having fun in what you do, then you should be training people. And your senior people should be training, because something miraculous happens when they train. They actually learn. If any of you have been in a situation where you train somebody, you're the one that learns. And so this is really important for the culture of independence, which is that we should be training our staff, we should be investing in them as well, and recognizing that people can't get good at jobs unless they enjoy them. It's really difficult for you to get good at anything you hate. So this is a really important thing, that this is supposed to be an industry that you enjoy being in. It's supposed to be fun. And I ask you, how much fun can you have at anything if you've only got a 10% of the time to do it in? We have to make more time to be creative, and we have to understand how that works. And we have to show the larger firms that they don't have the monopoly on fun. You know, just because you're making lots of profit and you're worth an awful lot of money doesn't mean to say you're having fun. You know, I'd rather be having fun and getting good at what I do rather than making long-term profits. I mean, if we're thinking in the long term, the profits will look after themselves. They're the byproducts of happy cultures and people having fun and being productive.
Do you feel like the focus on profitability at the oligarchs, for example, is detrimental? You would rather look at the top line?
Well, here's the thing. Something really unusual has happened to the Standard & Poor 500. For the first time in a very, very long time, dividends and buybacks have exceeded all of their earnings. Let me just say that again. Dividends and buybacks have exceeded all of their earnings for the S&P 500 in the last year. Now, that means something really interesting. That means that they see no opportunity for growth, they have no use for shareholder money, and they are returning it. So they see, for as far as the eyes can see, a low-growth economy. Now, that should be meat and drink to the independents, because I see opportunity just about wherever I go. If the S&P 500 can't see opportunity, well, let's give just 10% of that capital to us. We'll put it to work. We'll find the opportunity.
And funding this growth, you have a bank facility.
Yeah.
It's $27 million, right?
Yeah.
Do you think PR firms should become more comfortable with debt as a means of funding growth?
Well, I'd say actually, if you are not borrowing money, then you're not running very efficiently, because at the moment, debt, the cost of money, is at an all-time low. And so if you're in a business that can make 5% profit, I mean, some of the guys here will be saying 5% profit and sneering at that, but actually that's almost twice the cost of capital. So if you're making 5% profit, you should be up to your ears in debt and applying somebody else's money and taking the opportunities. I mean, it's never been cheaper to do that. Now, provided you can service the debt, and most of you can, I think you should get very comfortable. And I think banks see us as an opportunity as well to grow. After all, most of the growth and the employment does come from SMEs and from the independent sector.
You've said previously there are two dangers for PR agencies working globally: being marginalized by scale or being marginalized by other functions taking your profession. Could you talk a little bit about both of those threats and how you see them now?
Yeah, I think everybody knows the issue about being marginalized by scale, because if you can't compete, I mean, everybody's had the experience of having an account, say, in Europe or in Asia, and then being told by the client that they're consolidating it all into their parent PR agency in the US. So it's easy to be marginalized by scale. And there's a danger that you can be too big to be small and too small to be big. And so that's an easy marginalization. But actually, when it comes down to looking at the industry and the other threats that are open to us, if we don't learn about search, creativity doesn't matter. There's no point being really clever and creative with your messages if nobody can find them. There's no point being the best shop in town that nobody knows where it is. You know, when we create stories and we look at how to propel clients, we have to understand not only is it about creativity, but it's also about the science as well. We have to be able to unify those two things. So, you know, we have to learn about these new areas, and they're not difficult areas to learn about. They just need a bit of confidence and a bit of investment, that's all.
And how do you view, I mean, you're bullish, clearly, which is refreshing, frankly, to hear. But how do you view overall global PR growth? Because there is a lot of economic uncertainty in many regions. You know, China is not as strong as it once was. Latin America appears challenged. I mean, we know about Europe.
Well, let me ask a really simple question. Did we really think innovation is ever going to happen when everybody's growing at 20% per annum? I mean, do you really think that's when people try to do something? Because everything's working so well, we're going to completely change the model. I mean, people do not innovate when everything's going up in a linear sense. And as independent agencies, how can we possibly challenge when everything's going up in a linear 20% per annum? We need it to be disrupted. We need it to get tough, because then we can innovate. We can come up with new ideas, because frankly, that's the only time anybody innovates, when something doesn't work anymore. So if we're heading for a recession, and we are, and it's going to be much tougher, I mean, that's a great opportunity for us. Change brings opportunity, and I would rather be at the head of 600 people in 25 wholly owned offices around the world, competing with a public company brand. I'd be much more comfortable with that, because we can simply out-invest them market by market, and we can also have a lot more fun. If you're looking to work in an agency during a recession, well, maybe one of your criteria should be, am I likely to have some fun there? Because if you're going to have some fun, then you might learn something and you might get better at what you do. Because I don't know anybody that can get better at anything if they hate what they do. And if it's too dominated by profit and too dominated by short-term finance, that will be the case.
Chris, would you ever sell?
Aaron, if you've got some cash in your back pocket, Aaron, I'm always open to offers. You know, I will always talk to anybody. But I would encourage you not to think of selling as being a binary process. It's not either selling or being sold. You can create employee ownership, and you can move equity into an employee benefit trust, and you can spread the ownership. So some of the founders can actually take capital off the table by funding employee benefit trusts, spreading the investment, and creating more like-minded entrepreneurs like you, who are then going to build the business. Well, why wouldn't they? Wouldn't you feel more obliged to work in a company, to give off your best and give up so much more time if you had a stake in it? It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have control of it, but having participation in it, why wouldn't you do that? To me, that's the most bizarre form of common sense that's going. It works in the law, in the practice of law, it works in management consultancy, it works in accountancy, and every other professional services organization on this planet, but yet it doesn't seem to work in marketing services. Well, I think it should, and I think it could.
Why do you think it doesn't?
Well, because of the structures that we've got in the industry, because the top 20 organizations are dominated by public ownership. And of course, the largest of those, Edelman, is still an independent. And that does tell us a story, which is that they get there for a reason. And firms like mine don't get to where they're going because of the genius of the founder. I can assure you that that's the case. You know, when it comes to thinking long term, maybe that's an advantage. But it's not the genius of the founder. It's about well-organized and well-motivated teams of people, not one rainmaker, groups of people who enjoy each other's company and want to work long term together. And so if those people are motivated, then the team will be successful.
So I just got a couple more questions before we open it up to the floor. I'm kind of interested in your views. As a firm that's now 2 decades old, how important is it to renew the leadership of the firm? And how do you handle that balance between retaining, you know, people that have been with you, been loyal, helped grow the firm, and renewing the leadership to ensure that you're maybe ready for the challenges of the next 2 decades?
Yep, so that's a really difficult balance to strike. I've had people who have worked in the business for 20 years. They become friends, we've grown up together, and I really value them. But we've also got people who come into the company afresh, and they're bright and they're ambitious, and sometimes they can get the perception that if there's too many people that have been there for too long, that there's no opportunities for them. There is no right answer to that. You have to get the balance right. And so we've taken the decision to refresh the management structure by doing exactly what you suggest and bringing fresh people into positions. And that, I think, my team will probably say has been universally good for us. But having people around that have been with you for a long period of time, trust is one of those things that you cannot measure. Whether you trust somebody or whether you trust the people that you work with, that's something to do with this. If you try to put it all on profits, that's all to do with this. And good agencies run on this, not just on this. Maybe a combination of the two.
And I've got to get you up. So I've got to ask this question because you are someone that's very active in British politics. What's your take on Brexit?
Well, there was, I think, a surprise to everybody. I mean, and so one of the interesting questions here, and you can ask Pippa Malmgren about this tomorrow. So she's much more of an expert than I am. But it took everybody surprised. And the question really is not what happened, but why did nobody see it coming? And so one of the questions here is, why did none of our economists and our financiers see the 2009 crash? Why did they not see Brexit? Is it because we're becoming really, really analytical and reductive in our analysis, and we're not actually joining the dots? So my book makes the contention that it's no longer enough for people to analyze things and go and get university degrees and then doctorates and then fellowships beyond that. The profundity of the analysis is not enough anymore. We have to have the parenthesis, the ability to look across, because our industry is so joined up now to so many other areas that we can only make sense of it by contextualizing it. And in that issue is the future of our industry, because PR people are not just there to be able to confection what the company says. We're there also as a radar system to be able to spot opportunities, spot threats that are approaching companies, and what better mechanism than social media to be able to look at the tone of voice, the conversations that are occurring, and actually go into the boardroom and say, it's about time we demonstrated some situational fluency in the markets that we're in, so that we can actually lay out some form of narrative that actually fits with the market that we're in. Companies can't come out and just say, we're going to go over here. They have to know where they're starting from. And that means situational fluency. And actually, that's where PR people have got a real opportunity over other functions. After all, we're the only ones that talk to the client every day of the week and twice on Sunday. You don't get that from advertising or direct marketing or events or any other marketing mix element. The PR people are still the ones that talk to the client every day of the week and twice on Sunday, and often several times on Sunday.
Let's open up to the floor. We've got time for questions. Julian, please, can we get a mic? There's one coming.
Chris, thank you. And that's a very sparky talk, generally. I just wanted to ask you, though, do you think that the independent sector should do more as a collective to make its own case? And I mean, John was talking about Omnicom University. The big holding companies have big PR machines. A lot of us are very effective individually, but not necessarily collectively. Do you see there's more scope for us to become more collectively responsible and make our case better as a whole?
Well, I think the people in this room that work in those independents, some of them have founded them, some of them have helped to found them and grow them. You've changed your world. And if you've changed your world, I think that probably qualifies you to be in a situation where you can change other people's worlds as well. You know, what you've done in creating these agencies is something very special. You've actually created your own brand and your own approach, and you've said, no, I can do this better. And when people say, I can do this better, the whole industry gains from that. And so, yes, I do think the independents should take themselves more seriously. I do think we should be more ambitious about it. And I think we should be prouder of the bravery and courage that exists in this room of people who are prepared to stand up and say they'll do it themselves. And they'll grow a business and they see an opportunity. And in so doing, they benefit everybody, including the industry, by raising standards and raising the opportunities for other people around them.
Hiya. So, what's your driver? What sort of really horrible phrase, but gets you out of bed in the morning? What's sort of keeping you sort of fresh and sort of as sort of driven as you seem to be?
Well, I think it's, I mean, this is, you know, everybody in this room, I mean, this is not a dress rehearsal for another session that's going to happen, you know, a week later. This is, you know, you're only living this once. This is supposed to be fun. I mean, have we forgotten this? This is supposed to be an industry that people want to go into because it's fun. And yes, of course, we've got to make money, but the tail doesn't wag the dog. You have to understand here that the profits are a byproduct of happy, ambitious, focused people. It's not the other way around. You know, if you set a profit target, that's not going to make everybody happy. The profits might be 20%, they might be 25%, they may even be 30%. But actually, you measure a business in the long term by its culture and how happy people are. And so there are so many opportunities for this industry. I mean, I can't even begin to name them. For us, we've got an embarrassment of opportunities around the world. It's a huge market out there. There's so much opportunity. And this has got to be the most fun you can have with your clothes on. It should be a profession that you're proud to be in. And yet we see so many people saying this is, you know, having a tough time, there's going to be a recession. You know, for people in this room, we're as buoyant as a sea of corks. You know, if the sea goes up and down, we're going to go up and down with it. You know, we're not going to get drowned. We're not going to get submerged in this. We should have a bit more confidence about the future and feel good about what we've done and our ability to cope with it. Because if there is a recession coming, and there probably is, then it's our time. It's our opportunity to move with the opportunities that come up as a result of the recession. And a lot of people are frightened about it. And it's time for us to be a bit more confident, I would say.
I think we've got time for one more question. Nope, the lure of the bar is proving quite strong at this time of the day. Okay, well, Chris, thank you so much. That really was too fast to think. Thank you.